Welcome back to ASEAN in Focus. The ASEAN Integration Economic Blueprint envisions the establishment of a single market and production base, a highly competitive economic region, a region of equitable economic development, and a region fully integrated into the global economy. What are the prospects and challenges for the Philippines when this comes in? Here with us again this afternoon is one of the foremost economists of the country, formerly Secretary General of the National Economic Development Authority, and now the chairperson of the Development Academy of the Philippines, Dr. Cayetano Pedraga. Good afternoon again, sir.
Good afternoon,
Okay.
Dr. Tabunda.
Okay. Our first question, so we're now discussing the opportunities and challenges for the Philippines. What are the prospects for our country regarding ASEAN integration?
Well, the prospects in general is that there will, of course, be new industries. We do have some comparative advantage in certain areas. But more directly, I think, for businessmen, we will need a lot of infrastructure investments.
Yes.
Just to be able to meet up with our ASEAN neighbors in competition. And this means that there will be a lot of business, I think, on the construction side.
Yeah, so that's the
this
hard
will be in many
infrastructure.
areas, hard infrastructure. And there will also be need to do many of the social services that we will need for bringing inclusive growth to the Philippines. There will be new industries, I think, and that will be easier. I think we actually look weak, but we're maybe actually strong in some areas where at the moment we haven't revealed anything yet. Among others, we used to be quite strong in the electrical and machinery parts of industry. Maybe with the bigger market, we will be able to do a bit more, but that will also require some investments. And there was a study in 2013 by Mr. Shuhibul, which shows that in some parts of machinery and also in transportation, we actually do have some comparative advantage. Of course, our tropical products will continue to be there, and in services we should be able to go and do many of these things.
Yes. Under soft infrastructure, one of our weaknesses, actually one of our traditional weaknesses, is on research and development. So what needs to be done here, sir?
Well, for me, one of the reasons that we were poor in research and development was because we had an overly protected market where you really didn't need to improve your products. You could sell because you did not have too much competition. That's been changing. And just take, for example, the food industry. There are things that are cropping all over the place because the opportunity is there. Our incomes are increasing. But more important, I think, it's the ability to bring in the inputs, experiment with it, and then essentially come out with better products. That's starting to happen in areas, I think.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. I understand research and development, funding for research and development should be shouldered by government.
Well, there are parts. If you look at research and development, there's one that's known as the basic infrastructure for research.
Okay.
The education, the experimentation that's done on some of the more basic research, like plant biology and so on. But then when you go to applied parts of that, where you now need to bring what's been found in the laboratories to market, then private sector will need to invest in that. That's been, I think, quite lacking because before we were quite content to take technology to us abroad, bring it here, essentially just doing exactly the same product. That's not going to be working now because they have a much bigger market.
Okay. What about the challenges the prospects for higher and inclusive growth? I mean, reducing the income gap within the
There
country.
will be both, I think, a challenge and an opportunity. The challenge will come because of the transition cost. Some industries will necessarily be adversely affected and they will slow down, which means that you have to retrain some of their workers to go into the sunrise industry. The opportunity is that if we have a bigger market and we manage to do the infrastructure investments, both hard and soft, and we are able to bring down the cost of doing business, then our new industry should grow fast and it will be able to absorb. But in all of this, we will need to invest in our young, in education, in health, so that we will have a workforce that can respond well to competition.
About the environmental considerations, disaster risk reduction? We've been the center of the super typhoons, tsunamis, earthquakes.
Well, fortunately, I think in the past 2 years, we have shown that we actually have resources to meet some of that. The thing to do is to get disaster readiness and climate change mitigation to become part of the way we do things. The other part, I think, of the danger is that there might be a race to the bottom as far as environment is concerned, as companies try to be more market competitive than the others. This will require that I think the ASEAN governments will have to sit around and say, these are the environment. So harmonization as far as environmental rules might be something that will be good for everybody.
So what are the forces that are, to our side, the forces at work for the Philippines when it comes to ASEAN integration? What is it on our side?
I think we have a very flexible and quite manageable labor force. We've had our problems on the labor front before. We've gone through that. We have a labor sector that, of course, still wants to have many of the labor requirements taken care of, but at the same time understand that there is now a much bigger market. The flexible labor force, and we've shown that we can work under different circumstances all over the world. So we have essentially a very strong labor force. We have a lot of free capital at the moment. Our saving rate is, as a percent of GDP, is higher than our investment rate. And so there's a lot of resources that's not being used. It's a matter of putting up the companies that can take advantage of this. And this may actually require some partnerships with foreign companies. So I think when you look at it, we do have some strengths. Many of it we had not really exploited before. But now we will be forced to do so.
What about, we have constantly received positive credit ratings from the different credit agencies. What does this mean for us?
Well, positive rating agencies just essentially they say if this country borrows, can they pay? And our fundamentals are good in that sense. One is our fiscal balance is firm and it looks like we can handle it. Our balance of payments seems to be in good shape with OFW remittances and now increasingly BPO. And I expect also with tourism coming in. And then it's just a saving and investment gap. But the gap there is more the fact that we are saving more than we're investing. So in fact, we will have to use that. That's the reason that our credit rating is quite good. Making use of that credit rating, I think, from the point of view of the Philippines is really our problem. How do we get more investments, vehicles, more investment projects, so that we are able to use our resources so we can grow faster and also in an inclusive way.
What about the downside? What are the risks, the downside for the Philippines? Of course, we have calamities. And then,
that one is always a shock, and that's a shock also to the macroeconomy. In the latest GDP numbers, for example, one of the major reasons that the GDP growth rate went down from 6.4 to 5.3 on an annual basis, but on a per quarter, is that the agricultural sector
suffered a lot.
So this is affected by the weather. That can be a problem. But as we actually, from a point of view of just GDP alone, when we try to get ready for these disasters, we'll actually be doing, number one, GDP will go higher, but also second, we become stronger. The other challenges would be, there will always be transition costs. And as some industries grow, but also other industries slow down, then there will be a need to move people from one place to the other. The society, the social fabric will have to be husbanded, so to speak. I mean, we need to take care of that. And we need to tell people so that they will understand that there is a goal in the future and we need to work together in order to get to that point.
Since yesterday we were talking about transition costs, so specifically, what are these and what do they involve?
Well, two main things. Number one is the industrial restructuring. Some industries will grow faster, others will grow slower.
Such as?
For example, very clearly that we will have industries. I think a very strong things that we can expect is we already have a large market.
Okay.
So we will start to doing more production internally just because the market is there. At the same time, with the integration, goods can flow in and out
freely.
So contrary to what most people actually think, I think there's room for manufacturing in the Philippines.
Yes, yes.
And we will have some things there. The other part of it is the way our growth is happening globally, certain groups of the population will be left behind.
Okay.
I mean, people, the poorest, they will not have the wherewithal to invest in their children. Government will have to make sure that the future generations of these will not be permanently poor, that we are able to take them out. So these are all part of the transition costs. And that's why this is a challenge, I think, for the government. The social aspects.
Social aspects, especially people being left behind in poverty.
Yeah.
Can we not do a China, which has lifted a massive portion of its population from poverty over just a few years?
That's actually already happening to a certain extent in the Philippines. You know, but in the case, for example, China, the coastal areas have become much richer.
Okay.
But that has left the interior provinces. In the Philippines, certain groups of the population have really benefited from BPO and OFW remittances. But, you know, as that happens, the demand goes up, prices of goods go up. Those who are not able to participate in the bigger business are going to be left behind because their incomes are the same but prices are higher. So we need to be careful about this.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for that very informative interview, and we hope to see you in one of our future episodes of this show. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you.